So, hello and welcome everybody to another Sacred Wisdom podcast. In this podcast today, we are going to discuss the foreign conquests. And this is regarding the conquistadors and their traveling to Latin America, North America, and what they found. And what is very interesting, what fascinated me was the Patagonian giants in Latin America. And I am joined with the incredible Steve today, as always, and he's going to discuss about what these giants are. So how are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing really well, Zach. I hope it was good with you.
Fantastic, bro. Really good. First of all, let's give a breakdown to the audience of what a primordial giant is and what they actually represent, what you mean by that term.
Well, I believe that the primordial giants were the first humanoids on planet Earth. I do not believe Homo sapiens or human beings were the first bipedal life forms in terms of being sentient and empathic and having higher cognition levels than, shall we say, the animal kingdom. I don't believe in the highly bogus theory of evolution that Charles Darwin postulated. I think that is so ridiculous, the idea of that taking place. And we have to remember that going back to the actual time of the Upper Paleolithic, much of planet Earth was frequented by these primordial giants. So in terms of their longevity, they were on planet Earth for many aeons of time before human beings basically developed intermediate level types of civilizations. These primordial giants already had access to different forms of occult technology. And obviously, we've touched on this in previous Sacred Wisdom podcasts in regards to the civilization of Hyperborea that existed in the Arctic North Polar region in northern Russia, where you had the Cyclopean giants, also known as the Hyperborean giants. And because of their pale complexions, they were also known as the white giants, many of which had bright red hair and bright red beards. And this is exactly how you would describe the primordial giants. They were very similar in their corporeal or physical appearance. So they had a much longer, shall we say, multi-generational existence on planet Earth than Homo sapiens or human beings. And their existences, their incarnations, they extend back into the mists of time, going back to at least the Upper Paleolithic, if not further back than that, here on planet Earth. And they were literally civilization builders. Much of what we have around us today on planet Earth is connected to these antediluvian giants or primordial giants. Antediluvian giants suggest that they are hugely statured bipedal humanoids that existed before the first great flood and the second great flood that is so prevalently talked about in world mythology and world folklore. So that's how I would define them as anciently founded, really the first humanoids, the first advanced bipedal life forms to exist here on planet Earth.
And they go back to Atlantis, right? So they're going back as far as Atlantis. And
so if you go back to the time of the eventual destruction of the last remnant Atlantean islands around 10754 BC to around 10753 BC, many of those white giants or Atlantean giants escaped the destruction of Atlantis, and they covertly traveled into different subterranean reaches of the Hollow Earth. And they built and developed new communities there. They enhanced and manufactured their own advanced base occult technology. But they also traveled into North America, Central America, South America, and parts of mainland Europe, as well as other parts of planet Earth. I'd say definitely in Central Asia and across Eastern Asia as well. So they have a very long-term standing relationship with the geomagnetic ley lines, the intersecting vortices, the key and very essential geographic locations on planet Earth where interdimensional activity takes place and has done so for many aeons of time. And the primordial giants essentially really are connected to Hollow Earth folklore and the ancient civilizations of both the Lemurian continent and the Atlantean continent. So, and it's more than likely there is some kind of historical links. Again, this is speculation on my part to do with the Antarctic South Polar region as well. And obviously, as we've discussed in previous Sacred Wisdom podcasts, to do with Great Tartaria in northern Russia, the white giants or the Tatarian giants were very, very prevalent in that civilization across that landmass. So they are very important to the actual authentic history of planet Earth. And I think in terms of archetypes, where you can touch on the Jungian archetypes of Carl Gustav Jung. We look at world mythology and world folklore. There are so many different stories or accounts of these primordial giants. So they're endemically linked in some fashion to the collective unconscious of humanity.
And just interesting, how do you see them as a symbol to the subconscious?
I think they represent some aspect of Homo sapiens or human beings that is seemingly being lost. It isn't
The
lost.
ancient
It's just,
knowledge.
yeah, it's been suppressed for such a long duration of time here in this 3D holographic reality of the material dimension that is being heavily manipulated by the policymakers and controllers for many, many generations, that it's seemingly been forgotten. However, they do represent that concealed level of aspects in ourselves to do with the potential of human consciousness to re-emerge and human beings to fully embrace these different forms of suppressed occult technology and to remember and honor who we are as soul personalities and the sovereign rights that we have as human beings here on planet Earth, just as the white giants that had frequented planet Earth for many aeons of time before us had done. They lived in perfect balance with the land-based and aquatic ecosystems. So everything's become very disjointed on planet Earth. There's so much distortion and inversion going on, and so much, shall we say, there's so many mental health issues for so many different human beings now taking place, that you can feel things are coming to a convergence point within this 3D holographic reality and the material dimension that seems so condensed, with vibrations that seem so solidified.
You're right, and it is condensed. We're at a point where this knowledge is coming out, but giants they're always a big subject in films, and they're so much fascination. So you're so true about the subconscious and this need, this curiosity that humans have about giants. So something built into us. But one particular tribe of culture that was in North America were the American Indians. The American Indian tribes, they had many encounters with giants, which it actually is not that too long ago. There are accounts going back to the late 18th century.
That's right.
Various newspaper articles you can find online where they're reporting giants, all sorts of, and of course you've got the Sikash giants as well, which are incredible.
That's right.
But what about the American Indian tribes, especially the Choctaw and the Choctaw Indians?
If you look at those specific types of American Indian tribes, like the Choctaw Indians or the Chata Indians of the southeastern United States, the Navajo Indians or the Diné or the Nabiho Indians from the southwestern United States, you've got the Comanches or Numanu from the Great Plains, the Northern Peyotes of Eastern California, and so on and so on. It's such a vast number. Looking at the 500 Indian nations of the United States of America, and then you obviously look at the Canadian First Nation Indians, going up into the Canadian Arctic and all those different locations. It's so incredible, the information that they have in their native folklore concerning these white giants, and they don't really have any positive accounts. There was a lot of conflict that went on for many aeons of time on the North American continent between the American Indian tribes and these white giants. But in all of the accounts from Native American folklore, what is very clear is that these white giants or North American giants really were civilization founders. They really looked after themselves. They were very insular, very parochial. They were very territorial, and they saw outsiders as a direct threat. And the reasons behind that we're never really going to know, but it lends one to the idea that could be postulated that perhaps going back to the Upper Paleolithic, perhaps to the destruction of the civilization that had existed on the Atlantean continent and its remnants that was destroyed. Many left before the complete destruction of the Atlantean islands around 1075 BC to 1073 BC, that some kind of interspecies conflict arose where a level of hatred and dislike and mistrust built so intensively over many generations of time. There was a division that emerged between the original white giants of planet Earth the Cyclopean giants, the Hyperborean giants. They have many different descriptive names. And the American Indian tribes, as with various other tribal groupings around planet Earth, including the Irish Celtic tribes, the Celtic Britons, and obviously in mainland you had the Gaulish Celts of France and Germany. Just as a few examples, the Celtic folklore really goes into great detail about the various conflicts the Celtic peoples had with these white giants. So we know this is a commonplace theme that runs right the way through world mythology and world folklore. And the Native Americans, as you know, were the first ecologists in the United States of America, and they lived in perfect balance with Mother Nature. They revered the land-based and aquatic ecosystems as the white giants had done. But there was obviously such differences in their thinking that neither side could really get on. I think in terms of world idealism, it would be wonderful to think that they could have got on in a co-collaborative partnership or relationship and built an incredible civilization, which would have been quite profound on the North American continent, with American Indians, these white giants, all working together for the better good, and therefore the embetterment of the mother nature around them and their own psychological and emotional health. But it didn't happen.
So David Cusack actually wrote a book, didn't he, called The Sketches of Ancient History of the Six Nations in 1827.
That's right, yes.
And that documented giants, didn't it? Had images of giants as well in there, right?
Yes.
So that was, talk about that book.
In David Cusack's Sketches of Ancient History of the Six Nations that he published in 1827, he discusses the Renong Wetet Wenka, which are the stone giants. And these stone giants consistently battled and conflicted against the Tuscarora Indians, that are also known as the Skaroruri, or the shirt-wearing people. So again, we have another account in the book of David Cusack concerning these white giants on the North American continent and the problems they seem to consistently cause. And it seemed that they were agitators. They couldn't just leave the Native Americans alone.
Well, understandably, maybe it's because of the previous attacks they had on themselves, and they were actually we don't know, but I mean, it could have been just a battle. But so coming from North America, Steve, and we move down into Latin America, we have all the conquistadors that traveled there in the 15th, 16th century, probably previously as well, and went there and actually discovered all this landmass and all these different types of civilizations, and one of which were the Patagonian giants, which we'll come on to in a minute, but the Aztecs particularly as well, because that was an interesting in center part of South America, very interesting culture. Now they had giants living amongst them as well, supposedly, right?
Yeah, the Aztecs, as a civilization, have, from Aztec mythology and Aztec folklore, they have so many stories where they were battling against these white giants in that part of South America. It was quite incredible. There's actually quite a few different woodcuts showing the capturing of some of these giants, many of which are at least 10 to 12 feet tall. And according to the Spanish conquistadors, such as Juan Saedina de Grijalva and Hernan Cortes de Monroy, a Pizarro Altamirano, or Hernan Cortes, there were a civilization of Mexican giants that were very prevalent in that part of Latin America and were seen by many of the other tribal groups as very threatening. They were feared. They weren't liked at all. They weren't revered. They weren't admired. They were seen with great repulsion. They were not liked at all.
With the Aztec Empire, what happened to these giants? Did these giants disappear, disperse possibly into the Hollow Earth or into these subterranean caverns, or what?
We know from the account of the Spanish conquistador, who was called Juan Saedina de Grijalva. He began his warfare campaign against the Aztec Empire from the 7th of April, 1518 to the 29th of October, 1526. Now, he was working with the first Marquis of the Valley of Azaza, which is Hernan Cortes, and they encountered a number of these white giants during their attacks against the Aztec Empire in those years.
Mm.
So there seem to have been a number of these white giants, or shall we say Latin American giants, that were living within the civilization that the Aztec Indians had constructed, but they were seen as outsiders. They weren't included fully in the civilization. They were barely tolerated. But of course, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in that part of the world, they saw them as a grave threat, and they were exterminated, as were so many of the Aztecs, like the Inca and the Toltec and the Mayans. So there was a obviously some kind of cultural relationship where there was some toleration, but there was a lot of hatred also towards the white giants from the Aztecs, and many of them
Interesting.
were killed. And it's likely they were killed because they themselves were also very aggressive towards them and were seen as some kind of threat to their own survival. I think there was
With the Aztecs, though, just with the official story, they were always sort of portrayed as quite a barbaric society in themselves, weren't they? And
yes.
I would believe that they're very advanced. When there is accounts that the Aztecs definitely encountered giants and they were interacting with some sort of giants.
But
So,
there's many.
but
If
the
you go
official,
on,
sorry, I just say the official story's not there, though, is it? The official
no,
story,
but there
not,
is.
not
No, but the truth is, if you look at the accounts from Aztec mythology and Aztec folklore, they have extensive amounts of stories about the offspring of the white giants, the connection of those white giants to the Aztec pantheon, and that, so they were prevalent on the continent of Central America and South America. They were the first builders of civilization on planet Earth, as I mentioned earlier in this Sacred Wisdom podcast, and they were very important because they paved the way for what Homo sapiens, or human beings, would do in the later stages of the historical timeline. So that's what was going on, was really an extermination of those civilization builders, and their replacement with a new order of thought based around European Christianity. And European Christianity, in many ways, was nothing to do. I just want to say this: the teachings and the ministry of Yeshua ben Yosef, the Lord Jesus Christ, it became a huge multinational financial institution based on the acquiring of, material wealth. And that's pretty much it, under the
distorted
guise
again.
of Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. And Steve, so let's go over to just move a little slightly over to the coast of South America, and we're going to the Patagonia giants. So we're going to go
Yeah.
down there because that particular region's fascinating. Somewhere I think we should visit one day. I think we should actually do a video on there and actually go there and explore these locations, me and you. I think it would be quite interesting.
Yes, so that the elusive Patagones, or Gigantes Patagonicos, or Patagonian giants, were a race of Gigantes Latinos, or flattish place giants, from the Patagonia region of Argentina in South America. Now, there is a large number of quite specific historical interaction and accounts of sailors and navigators from various nations in Western Europe, including from the United Kingdom of Great Britain, that encountered these Patagonian giants, or the white giants of Argentina. And it's quite incredible when you actually read these accounts. There was communication going on. It appears as if the white giants there must have been connected to some either ultra-terrestrial group or extraterrestrial group, because the way they viewed white Europeans was as though they were almost pale complexioned ultra-terrestrials or extraterrestrials that had come from the stars or descended from the cosmic heavens to planet Earth, either as their saviors or as their teachers, and they seem to be overwhelmed with joy. And unfortunately, that was obviously a terrible mistake on their part, because that's not what the European settlers, whether it was the Spanish conquistadors or Catholic priests, were actually doing in Central America and South America. And the same thing was going on in the Patagonian region, therefore in Argentina. So yeah, but the accounts are very detailed. And, we have to remember that the descriptions given about these Gigantes Latinos, or flattish place giants, put them around 13 to 15 feet in height on some occasions. And many of the European Christians who traveled down into the Patagonian region of Argentina and South America, had done so for near on 300 years. And there was, during that time, around approximately 300-year duration, the number of stories or accounts that were coming out of South America are just absolutely incredible. And the details given do indicate they can't have been falsified stories, almost like fairy tales told by navigators or explorers that had decided to
Anything
go
that's
to a new world.
that's what it is. Anything that doesn't fit the mainstream is mythology. So you had Magellan, who was the Portuguese navigator who went across in 1523. And that, incredible what he's actually wrote down an account of what he saw on the shoreline, didn't he, Steve?
Yes. No, these gigantes Patagonicus, or Patagonian giants, was seen during his voyage. And this Portuguese navigator, known as Ferdinand Sebastian Magellan, and his sailing crew observed one of these Patagonian giants or white giants whilst they were en route exploring the coastline of the Molucca Islands in their circumnavigation of planet Earth from the 16th of April, 1523 to the 27th of October, 1586. Now,
Wow.
The individual that is quite famous who accompanied Magellan was the renowned Venetian scholar known as Antonio Garagio Pigafetta. And he was one of the voyage's few survivors and the excursion chronicler who, with Ferdinand Sebastian Magellan, wrote a detailed account, of their encounter with Patagonian giants that was seen as twice the height of a man who was around, say, 6 foot at the time. So these giants were deemed to be around 12, maybe 13 or 14 feet in height. So they were huge bipedal humanoids that existed in the Patagonian region of Argentina in South America. So
must have been quite eerie arriving on the coastal line and seeing a 12-foot giant dancing with joy. You wouldn't.
That's
It'd be
right.
quite a surreal experience.
It would have
really.
been. You're right. It would have been. Antonio Garagio Pigafetta. Yeah, his exact words were, the Patagonian giant was observed, and I'm going to quote, on the shore of the port, dancing, singing, and throwing dust on his head, which would have been a very surreal thing to see. Some humanoid that was around 12 feet tall doing that on the beach or the shoreline where they were mooring their sailing vessel up to. So it makes you wonder what happened to the remnants of these white giants or Patagonian giants, as what happened to the Cyclopean giants or the Hyperborean giants, what happened to the remnants of the white giants or Tatarian giants of Great Tatarian northern Russia. It appears as though the civilization founders of planet Earth, the first bipedal humanoids, those that really developed the foundational essence of all future civilizations, were either unconsciously or indirectly eradicated, or they were pacifically and intentionally eradicated from the surface of planet Earth. And I think that's what I find somewhat disturbing, is if it was the latter and it was a planned system where there were deliberate intentions to remove them because human consciousness had to be completely reframed with a fictional backstory of eventual fake evolution, biological and genetic progression, which is really designed just to limit and invert human consciousness and take away any sense of spiritual aspiration towards the infinite oneness and the divine love of the universal creator, that we are sovereign beings with sovereign rights as incarnations and soul personalities on planet Earth, just as those white giants were for many aeons of time.
Incredible. And that is disturbing. If that was an eradication of this knowledge,
Yes,
it's
right, absolutely,
it really is, and it's been a molding. You can see in the last 500, well, especially probably longer, but the last 500 years, how there's a molding of the human condition, the human psyche, and that is not a good thing in the long.
Has definitely been in the last few centuries a war specifically to reshape or reform human consciousness, and therefore the collective unconscious, and therefore, shall we say, the collective shadow self of Homo sapiens, or human beings here on planet Earth, in regards to how individuals view the policymakers or controllers or whatever we could say is there. And I think when it goes back to the time of these white giants, as with the Patagonian giants in Argentina and South America and elsewhere around planet Earth, we have to really ask, what was it about such bipedal humanoids or hominids that was seen to be such a grave threat to what the rulership of planet Earth, or the rulerships of planet Earth under one greater rulership, was so concerned about? Because they would have been concerned about something, because
Sure.
why go to such ends to suppress that knowledge that they existed, when Western science, such as the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., as with Oxford University and Cambridge University here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, could easily help, with completely overhauling what's taught in schools, colleges, and universities, and accept that maybe Homo sapiens or human beings weren't the first bipedal, sort of more advanced and sophisticated life forms here on planet Earth, and these white giants existed in most countries on planet Earth and had come from a time going back to the Upper Paleolithic, going back probably even further to the existence of the Lemurian continent and the Atlantean continent and islands, where the history that we've been taught would suddenly fragment and literally completely dissolve and flitter away, and suddenly we'd have to completely overhaul and reformat what's being taught in schools, colleges, and universities. But then that would then open up
It'll actually be
many other
better.
avenues of inquiry as to do we have a hollow Earth? Are UFOs real? Is supernatural incidents or events, are they real? To do with ghosts or apparitions or and haunted houses, and the list just goes on. The Loch Ness monster and everything else, and going back even to the existence and the apparent demise of the dinosaurs on planet Earth, which it also is highly questionable.
Of course.
So,
but Steve, there was another guy, Sir Francis Drake, that actually came across the Patagonian giants as well. So there was others. So he talks about them being over 7-8 feet high.
Yes.
So what was, there's loads of people, and we go on and on. We can just keep going, and you've got Argentina.
I think it was the chaplain to the English privateer called Sir Francis Drake. And this chaplain was known as Reverend Francis Geoffrey Fletcher. He was the vicar of Tickhill in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. He went with Sir Francis Drake. Both arrived in the Patagonia region of southern Argentina on the 24th of June, 1578, where they encountered, shall we say, Patagonian giants that weren't anywhere near as tall as others that had been seen, previous to their arrival. And these Patagonian giants were around 7 feet 6 inches tall to maybe 8 feet 4 inches tall, to be exact. So either they were juvenile white giants or Patagonian giants. They may have been adolescents for all we know. And again, I'm just theorizing that we have no way of confirming that. But again, so we have the very famous Sir Francis Drake encountering, the white giants or Patagonian giants as well. So this was obviously an ongoing.
There's a lot more as well. There's William Bertram Adams as well in 1594, who on board the vessel came from Amsterdam, and he saw giants as well around the Chile area of South America. I mean,
yes. It's and these are just a small number, as you know, Zach, of the accounts. From if you go into doing the research, there were so many accounts from various explorers and navigators that were coming out of Western Europe, from countries like France and obviously Portugal and Spain. Many of those accounts have never been translated into the English language. So again, it's like with Cyrillic Russian language-based documents concerning Great Tataria that have been uploaded and placed onto forums and blogs in the Russian Federation. A lot of that isn't available in the English language. So we know that there are probably hundreds of stories of these observations and interactions with these white giants or Patagonian giants by European navigators, some of who were commissioned by the European monarchies, or were commissioned by the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican City State in Italy to explore parts.
Do you think once they discovered the Patagonia region, they just sent lots of people down there? Because there was others as well, wasn't there? There's Theobald the Weird. He was in 1599. He had
Yeah.
other encounters. So did they kind of find out that there was this giant region and they just flew loads of travelers and expeditions down there to kind of,
Yeah, I mean,
integrate?
you mentioned the Flemish captain and his Sebald Goyavet de Wert,
Yeah.
and he travelled from Goreri over Flaky Island of the Netherlands, and he arrived in the Patagonian region. I believe it was the 7th of April, 1599,
Yeah.
and you had the Dutch merchant captain known as Oliver Mediart van Noort, who had left Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And he arrived in the Patagonia region on the 23rd of February, 1599. And both these individuals observed the same white giants or Patagonian giants. So again, you see a pattern of explorers and navigators coming from Western Europe to South America, as happened previous to that with the Spanish conquistadors going into Central America and South America, and all these encounters, not just from their perspective in regards to their conflicts with the Aztecs, the Inca, the Toltec, and the Maya, but also these white giants or Mexican giants that were very prolific in their numbers, as well as the various Latin American giants that existed in parts of South America. So there's a pattern there of explorers and navigators going there and finding these huge bipedal hominids in existence there that go back at least to the Upper Paleolithic, if not further back, maybe even to the Mesolithic age. So we know that the history that we've been taught is largely incorrect. They were deliberately edited out of the historical timeline because they didn't fit the actual perception of the 3D holographic reality we define as this material dimension that was going to be presented to human beings in the future to contain and direct human consciousness in a very repressive and constrictive way in certain directions to try and limit human spiritual development. And that's what I really think it's connected with.
Yeah, it does feel like that. I
Uh,
mean, now you can see over the last 200 years, just from photography, how giants have kind of disappeared more and more. And I think the last giant we had was the Robert Wadlow, who was actually, not even actually and officially a giant. It was actually
no,
a
he was just
disease
a
that he
tall
had,
human being, very,
a
very
tall
tall
human
human
being.
being.
Yeah, so it's very different. And yeah, it definitely seems to be taken out. But the Patagonia region, particularly for me, is just absolutely mind blowing because
Yeah,
that's got the whole proof and evidence. I mean, actually, just with showing that there was these cultures around, and it shows that not too long ago. But yeah, you can bring it to today's age. Where do we have giants to today they're not in civilizations, and
no,
it's quite shocking, really. We will be doing, I think, and some more on the giants because I'm amazed by them. I find them fascinating. I want to know more, so we're going to keep researching this and looking into this. But bringing it up to speed, up to date, in 1766, you had the HMS Dolphin that arrived back in Britain. Now, what happened there? Because that's never really
yeah,
spoken about. Interesting name as well, HMS Dolphin.
yeah, yes, it's actually a nice name for a sailing vessel. So yeah, on the 21st of March, 1766, on return to the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the sailing crew of HMS Dolphin, navigated by Commodore John Nicholas Byron, purportedly had observed at least one, if not more, Patagonian giants that were apparently over 9 feet in height, frequenting the shorelines of the Patagonia region in southern Argentina. And a lot of the onboard sailing crew, as well as the Commodore John Nicholas Byron, were quite shocked at what they had seen. Look at the date that this took place, the 21st of March, 1766. So, we're looking at a period that's coming up towards the Victorian age here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. We're not talking about the time of the Spanish conquistadors or the
A
explorers
lot
and
later.
navigators from France and Portugal and so on. So there would have still been these white giants or Patagonian giants in existence there, even up until that Pacific year, if not a bit beyond there. There are really very few accounts that I'm aware of after that Pacific date. So it's interesting to note that they were obviously in existence in large enough populations in South America even up until what we would class as the modern age or the modern period.
Incredible. Yeah, there's a lot more. There's so much more to go into. So there is a chapter in our book, Mysterious Realities, which you can purchase on Amazon in paperback and in digital form in ebook. And we are going to do more on this subject because it's mind-blowing. And we have lots more research, and Stephen has gone into huge detail on certain sections as well. So a lot more to come. But for now, it's a bye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.